What's up, everybody? I'm Johnny Christ, and this is Drinks with Johnny. This is actually the continuation with my new friend Tony Khan. You ready to crack another White Claw and get into this?
Yeah, let's go.
Do it. 1, 2, 3. Such a good sound. Cheers.
Cheers to you.
I don't know if you could see this, Tony, but I had a friend make this koozie specifically for me. It says White Claw Wasted on it.
That's great. That's great.
I can get you one if you want, or I'm sure you got your own people.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, it is. I plan on hitting my pool immediately after this conversation with many more White Claws. This is what I do in quarantine now, apparently.
So the first time I ever drank White Claws was last summer. It was an AEW story, and now like White Claws are people of AEW. Backstage and, sometimes after the shows are over, even in the ring after the shows are over. And
you guys are hanging out in the ring?
Hey, the guys in the ring will go out with White Claws every once in a while. On the Jericho cruise, it was great because, like, Moxley wanted to do, like, the big chug and the Singapore cane action. And he was like, he walked out and he's like, unfortunately, we don't have any beer in the locker room. All they brought are these fucking White Claws. So and then he chugged a White Claw and the thing and did this, smash himself with the cane. It was great. He was still wearing the eye patch on Chris's cruise. It was a great time. But
what was the first time? Now go back to that first time.
Yeah, it was a great story. So last summer at my family's amphitheater here in Jacksonville, Daly's Place. Yeah. Where we've done some like great wrestling shows, and we're gonna do more great wrestling shows, a lot of concerts here. And in the summer we have Blink 182, and I'm like a huge Blink 182 fan growing up. It's like my childhood high school band, and so like there are Blink 182s out here, and like Darby, Jimmy, and Joey are about to be doing this Cracker Barrel Clash like 3-way match. And like they've just like kind of broken up at like a previous, as they were a tag team gone awry. And like I wanted to build their Cracker Barrel Clash like 3-way match at All Out, which ended up being a classic match. And so at this thing, there's like a Blink meet and greet, and like I'm effectively the promoter, like of this and like so like we kind of like went in on the back end after all the fans had gone in. The last 4 people to go up were me. And I had Darby, Joey, and Jimmy Havoc with me.
Nice.
And so I had them all. I was like, just let me do the talking. Like, I'll go up. And I'm going to, like, go up. And for, like, 90 seconds or whatever it was, I was saying what a fan I was. And, like, I'm a huge fan of Blink 182 and talked about, like, I own the venue. But I'm like, hey, I love your...
Yeah, you gave the bow, so, like, not worthy, and then you're like, yeah.
It was just, I was very, but it was real. They were so nice, but at the same time, that we didn't have a favor to ask. So, like, it was like, I was like, and Darby and Joey, to them, it felt like an eternity, but, like, for me, it was like laying the groundwork for the favor that they were so kind to do, which I was like, these 3 guys are wrestlers. Joey had been kicked out of a Blink concert famously for fighting.
I remember seeing that on some viral videos.
So like, there's that too. So like, that had happened. So like, and given that we're trying to promote this pay-per-view, and I was like, would it be cool if these 3 guys like here get into a fight in front of you, and then maybe like, I don't know, Mark, would you say something to the effect of, again, Janela, what the fuck? And like, so we shot. So. The guys just like break out in a fight. We shoot it.
I saw this video.
The whole thing took literally. It was one take. It's a 27-second video. That's how long the whole thing took. It was like the whole conversation that was like 90 seconds, and then we shot the whole thing in like 27 seconds, and that was it. And like, it was such a good day's work and such a good. I mean, you saw the video.
I love that video. That thing went viral. I didn't even know what I was watching. It showed up on like my Instagram feed like months or years ago. I can't keep track of time. But yeah, I remember seeing it and going, what the fuck is this?
It was great, right? So that it was like effectively 2 minutes into the day, like we're done with the thing. That was all we needed to accomplish that day. Yeah. So we got the shot, and then it was like, all right. And then like Darby doesn't drink. But for Joey and Jimmy and me, it was like, all right, well, we're done. We're off the clock, gentlemen. So Joey introduced me to the White Claw. That I was like, what is this? Like, I thought it was a sugary drink. I try to like stay fit and stuff. And if it's gonna be sugar, I would rather, if you're gonna cheat every once in a while, eat like Sour Patch Kids or something. Like
Okay,
I don't really want to drink like a sugary alcoholic drink.
I don't like those for the headache, to be honest. If there's any sugar in it, I'm like, alcohol is already made with sugar. Why are you adding shit to that? I don't know. That's just my take.
So like Joey, basically I was giving Joey a hard time about drinking White Claws, and then he was like, "Why don't you try it and look at the back label?" And I was like, there really is not much sugar. It's like 2 grams of carbs in the whole thing, and it's not that bad. And so and they're pretty good. So yeah, and that's how I got introduced to the White Claw. If that's too long a story, we can edit that out.
No. You're here to get into the weeds on that shit. This is what the deeper dive is all about.
I just like you said, that video went effectively viral, which is not a great word to use nowadays. But
I guess I didn't think of it that way, but you're absolutely right.
It spread.
It spread like a pandemic, is what you meant to say.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not what to say. Well, I did want to just say, Joey, I was wrong, and he was right. So the White Claws are good.
I had a similar thing with that. My wife was the one who was drinking them in the pool one day, and she's like, "I think you'll like this." I'm like, "There's no way." I'm sitting here drinking a big old IPA, not really healthy, but I love the taste, and but I'm the same way. Like I'm in front of a camera sometimes. I'm out on stage. I've always tried my best to not be a huge human at all times. So I do monitor that a little bit, and I tried it, and I was like, you know what, babe? This is fucking awesome. And then you have about 5 of them, and you feel pretty good.
That's it. That's it. There's a number in there in the low.
How many? So how many did you have on that first outing? You said you were. What time of day was it? You finished.
I mean, it was daylight. You saw that video. It was
daylight. Yeah, it was daylight. So you finished it, and you immediately started the White Claws right after that. And then I got to imagine you guys went out and partied, right?
No, we stayed there was a Blink concert. We stayed and went to the concert. It was great.
Did you party with the guys after the concert?
No, we just hung out around the stadium and stuff and messed around, and it was a good time. Those guys are great.
Great band, great show. I've seen a few with those guys, but seen them in passing a bunch. Like Travis is usually here in Orange County for the music festivals and stuff. So just say hi to those guys every once in a while. If you're ever watching, hello. They're probably not watching. Anyways,
it was cool that they did it. And I'm sorry to bring out it's just a fun thing because that's how I started drinking White Claws. And I know you've done some stuff with Darby, and Darby was there for this whole thing. And
dude,
even though
Darby
he doesn't
is
drink,
such a card. Did he tell you about everything that he brought his whole posse with him?
Yeah.
And we were hanging out in my park. He was like, "Oh, someone's got to get tased. Someone's got to get pepper sprayed." I'm like, "Okay, let's go with this and put a camera on it."
Darby's he's incorrigible.
Yeah.
And he's what a great wrestler.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
That's what makes him a great wrestler is he always wants to push it and do edgy, crazy stuff.
Are you gonna make a cameo in his movie that he's been talking about? Do you know about this?
I don't think so. I don't know if I'll be Darby's
you gotta have one little cameo in there.
Darby's wanted to make a lot of movies that we have not made.
Yeah, I know. Well,
But Darby what a gifted filmmaker Darby is, though. Seriously, a brilliant filmmaker. The short films he makes for the shows are fantastic.
They really are.
He does great work. My hats are off to him, and he's got a great team of people around him.
You really should do. You really not to harp on this, but you got to do the cameo so you could be kind of the Stan Lee of everybody's. You have to be a part of it. Just one.
No, I don't want to be. I don't like. It's supposed. I don't really like the Stan Lee cameo. The Stan Lee cameos are fun, but that's Stan Lee's things, right?
Yeah.
So
are you a big comic book guy?
Yeah, I'm not that bad. I was really into the Super Friends growing up, and then I love a lot of adaptations of comic books, if that makes sense.
Yeah, more graphic adult novels, maybe, or
The Killing Joke is great. I love the joke. It's a great payoff too. It's a great line at the end, right? It's a great the joke is a great joke.
I'll put in a badum on the post in that one.
Yeah, you can put it on. You can scroll it across the bottom line if nobody's ever. You can ruin the end of the novel.
So I'm not that big of a comic book guy, but like when I say adaptations, I also mean like film and television, to be honest. Like I've watched a lot of like movies and shows made of comics, and I've read some comics, but it's like mostly greatest hits. And I was really into Batman for a while, but there were so many different stories.
Who's your favorite Batman?
I was really.
I got to stop you there. Who's your favorite Batman? Everyone's got a favorite.
Of an actor?
Yeah.
The Batman of my childhood. Now it's not Adam West, but Adam West was the Batman of my childhood, and then Michael Keaton was kind of the Batman of my childhood. And I love both those guys, but probably Christian Bale, I think, has got to be the best for me, the best Batman.
I mean, they might be. I don't know. I guess I'm like a little bit partial to my childhood, maybe because I still think Keaton is the best Batman all around. That's me.
I love Michael Keaton. He's a great Batman. I love Birdman. When I see Michael
Birdman
Keaton,
was great, dude. That was such a cool movie.
Night Shift, like you think of Bill in Night Shift. I don't know, like that shows the versatility that a guy could be like Bill in Night Shift and Beetlejuice and do Birdman and be Batman and do all that stuff. Michael Keaton's the best. Yeah.
Well, so let's go back to a little. I mean, we're talking about your fucking likes and your dislikes. That's what we do on the show. Like what? Let's go back to what got you into wrestling. I mean, well, first, you know what? Fuck that. Before we even go into that, let's go all the way back. Like your dad was went to college as an engineer, correct?
Yeah.
And then and he was an immigrant, entrepreneur that got his own company. Started with an auto parts company, if I'm sort of right. And then when did you come into his life, and what was that like? I mean, honestly, like had he? I couldn't see a lot of interviews that had. Doesn't seem like you talk to a lot of people, so I feel very grateful that you're talking to me. Sure. But the fact that you, when was it that you came in and realized your dad was this fucking billionaire? Like, or was that
all great? It's all great stuff. So like. My dad, like you said, he was an immigrant, and he moved when he was like 16 to America, and he's been here for like 53 years now. And most of them he lived in Illinois, and now he lives in Florida. But Illinois is still like a second home for us. Okay. And, but he went to the University of Illinois, and that's where he met my mom.
Where in Illinois? I'm sorry, which city?
Yeah, Champaign is like University of Illinois is in Urbana-Champaign. Okay. The UIUC.
Okay, I know. I think we played like shows back in the day and through there.
I think so. Yeah.
Towns, yeah.
When I was in college. Man. I'm a guy from the Midwest, and my dad he created an auto parts company in the Midwest. He's the best, and he's built this auto parts empire. He expanded into sports. He's 69. And so he was in his like early 30s when I was born, and he was kind of building up a company, and he wasn't like a billionaire when I was like born.
What were the auto parts? Was it a hodgepodge of stuff, or was there a specific one?
It started a bumper and the one-piece bumper, and like the process for like stamping and building these bumpers is like he was the guy kind of behind that.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
With an engineering degree, he found a part and a new way to make it, and that's what kind of innovated for him to start this company. The company was around, but in its early stages, I'm guessing, by the time you come around?
Yes. By the way, dude, can my dad, literally, speaking of him, just texted me on what is like the bat phone thing. Can we pause for a sec?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, jump. We were talking about like how I believe the last thing was that your dad was kind of, in a way, revolutionizing how bumpers were made and the company he had. And then you come along before the company has really taken off.
He started an auto parts company, and he had a couple of factories in Illinois. But he really expanded like when I was young into like building factories in like Indiana and across Michigan and into the South. And all over, and then into other countries, and he built up into Canada and Mexico and into Europe, and like really this was all while I was growing up. So I kind of watched him build it. It was firsthand. It was so impressive to see.
It seems pretty
and
busy to be building a company like that with a young one around. I mean, I feel like that would be very difficult. Were you able to stay close at that time with your dad?
I saw him so much more after I was 12, because around the time I was like 11 or 12, I guess I would have been about 11. He got his first like private plane. And the private plane was like a real game changer, like truly, like in terms of being able, because like he would go to Detroit so often, a few times a week, and that's like a long drive from where we lived, and it would, and if he would
take like family time,
you would have to take a commercial flight, and it would be basically you'd have to come back the next day. So it would be like it would turn a day trip into like, now with a private plane, which, like I said, when I was 11, instead of like maybe only seeing him a few days a week, I'd pretty much see him most days, because like he would make other trips outside of Detroit, but Detroit took up like such a large percentage of his time that like he would go up to Michigan and also Windsor, which is like, on the border there with Detroit, as you know.
Okay.
And like, he would head up to like that area and be there so much. Like, so for me, like, that was probably when I started to see him a ton more. And that was really as he was taking off and getting bigger and bigger too. And things are really, I think, starting to really roll for him.
Yeah. I mean, obviously when you start incorporating a private plane, it's when you kind of start to go, okay, we're on the right track here. But yeah. I mean,
but, like he was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal when I was like 10 years old or 11 years old.
Sure.
I was probably 9.
What was that like? I mean, how what's the word? Like, not knowledgeable, but like, how much did you know of what a big deal that was, or were you kind of just
that was kind of as I started to learn about it and stuff, and then like. He was on a ABC World News Tonight with like Peter Jennings when I was like 12, and so it was like I started to understand it more and more. But he still, like at that time, was not even remotely as successful as he later became, and grew as built more businesses and did more things. And then he bought the Jaguars in 2012.
Okay.
So it's we're going into our.
When you guys when he bought the team in 2012, did you already have the Fulham football club?
No, that was after. That was the next year.
The next year, okay. I wasn't sure which one came first.
It was about a year. I think about a year and a half, close to 2 years later.
So he starts earlier on. Let's go back to that. You start to get a little bit more time with him because the private plane, you can start seeing more of them. And then, I mean, Did he start grooming you at that time? When did he start grooming you to become a partner with him? I mean, at this point,
never really. All the stuff I've done for him is stuff I like kind of grabbed the brass ring and I like took, because when he bought the Jaguars, it wasn't like he offered me a job or anything. I mean, I don't think he would have put me in any major position, but I'm an expert on like sports stats and wanted to innovate in football and bring that to the NFL.
Yeah, I read somewhere that you actually have. I'm sorry, but I read somewhere that you actually have like an analytics. I know that that's like part of your job there, but have you cultivated like a new way of reading analytics or something?
Well, I have a company called True Media that actually, it was like a couple years after we bought the Jaguars, and I'd started this analytics department and work with all these different providers. The best guys I'd work with were 2 guys out of Boston, and they had a small company, and they had like at that time, which is like I think 7 years ago, they had 9 baseball teams and working with them. And they were giving their stuff to NFL teams to work with their platforms and experiment and use their databases. And it was like, this is cool stuff. And they were giving it to us for free. And then when it came time to ask, like, the next year, it was like, you like the free trial? Would you consider using these products? And then
not a bad business model.
Yeah, it was like, you guys are great. And then I actually ended up investing in their business. And later I bought out their business. And so, for the last like 5 years, we've been running it together, and we've now have expanded it from 9 baseball teams to 20 major league teams and a bunch of teams internationally in Japan, work with a lot of big soccer clubs outside of Fulham. And
would you say those analytics resemble anything through like the Moneyball for a layman? Like
yeah, literally, that's like that's like literally what we do. Yeah, that is what it is. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. And you use it in your soccer league too, and everything.
Yeah, that's how I try to run everything I do. Like informed decision making, but like also you have to be like I think it helps to blend that with like some aspect of traditional scouting, frankly.
So yeah, I mean, when your dad buys the Jaguars, were you already a huge football fan, American football, obviously?
Yeah, huge fan.
What was your team growing up?
The University of Illinois was really my big team.
Okay.
And also a big Green Bay Packers Brett Favre guy.
Yeah.
Brett Favre is my
Who didn't like Brett Favre?
I have the same birthday.
Who didn't like Brett Favre in the 90s? We all did.
He's a great, in my childhood, he was a great player, but I've grown up and since then I kind of don't look at it like I used to through a different lens. But Brett Favre was the player in my childhood. And
Gotcha.
I was a big fan of the University of Illinois. And like when I was a kid, we actually had 2 of the top 3 picks in the NFL draft with Simeon Rice and Kevin Hardy.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kevin Hardy actually played for the Jags.
Oh, that's right. I didn't know that.
And they were a great team. And then, the Jags, they went, 14-2 in the regular season in 1999. And they were in the AFC Championship game and so close to playing the Rams in the Super Bowl. And, it was kind of crazy we'd end up here. But
you were obviously, so you were a fan when you saw him go, saw those guys go. I'm sorry, Hardy go over to the Jags. You're like, oh, that was the guy that I was watching in college.
Yeah.
So you naturally became a Jags fan, not knowing later you'd be running a lot of the science and analytics for the team.
Yeah, it's not like I was always like the Jags were not my I'd be lying if I said like they were always like my number 1 team or anything. But I liked the Jags a lot when Kevin Hardy went there because like Illinois was my big team because I grew up, right off the campus. I went to University of Illinois for college. My parents went there, like I said, they met there. That's rad.
So your parents are still together, or?
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. See, that's one of those rare stories. They meet in college. Through all the success, with all the kids, they managed to stay together. Kudos to your parents, man. That's
yeah.
Cool.
They've been together for like 50 years.
Wow.
So
that's rad.
Yeah. And they've been married for, close to 40 years. And, it's pretty cool. And they've lived, most of that time, all that time in Illinois until we moved to Florida just before they bought the Jags.
Great story with your parents staying together. We got a little bit into the origin of your love for football. Let's get to another one that you and I share.
If you want to talk about growing up, if you want to talk about the football a little bit more, I grew up around great football, and you like football?
I love football. I have to admit, my team, diehard Raiders fan, right here. I grew up on them.
The last game ever in the Oakland Coliseum, I was there.
You were there?
We won the last game ever in the Oakland Coliseum. I not only was at the last game in the Oakland Coliseum, we walked out with a win. It was a great Christmas present. It was a great trip out around the holidays. We didn't have the best season last year, but it was at least had a chance to play spoiler. So at the end of the year,
thank you for that. By the way, I had a chance to play spoiler. It was my fucking Raiders. Whatever. I'm happy they're going to Vegas to get a new stadium finally. I'm stoked.
Well, it was the last game in Oakland, and so it was kind of crazy because and I love the Raiders, and they're great people there, but it was cool because it means a lot to me as a historian to be at the last game in Oakland and to look around. And I've been it's many trips I made to the Coliseum with the Jags playing there, and I've seen great stuff. I saw Charles Woodson make one of the best plays. I was going to mention Charles Woodson again in a minute, but Charles Woodson made one of the best plays I've ever seen in my life against us when we were there once. And for this game, they had the legends of the Raiders there. So I was talking to Biletnikoff then I walked over. I was talking to Marcus Allen and Tim Brown before the game, dude. On the field for 5 minutes. They look good as hell. Marcus Allen and Tim Brown, they look like they could still play.
I'm sure. Great. That's. I mean, I guess it's surprising, but also that's fucking rad for professional athletes to have sustained the success and then afterward they're still able. I like seeing the ones that aren't all broken. To be honest, you get that sad story. You get the ones where it's you're a fucking superhuman.
It was so cool to go to that, and in what was an otherwise kind of disappointing season, we did have a surge at the end with a young team and won 2 of the last 3, and I was like really, really happy about that. And like the Oakland Coliseum was really fun, and so for me, like Illinois was my team growing up, and the Big Ten was stacked with talent when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. To put it in perspective, like I saw like every Drew Brees game. Like Drew Brees was a fantastic player for Purdue, and people forget what a great college quarterback Drew Brees was. He was the Big Ten
they
player.
forget it because he's such a big NFL quarterback too, so it's kind of overshadows the college career, I feel, in a lot of ways. But yeah, you as someone who was scouting and seeing all this stuff and being around the Big Ten for so long, yeah.
When I was a kid, Drew Brees was like, dude, I thought it was insane when he fell to the second round. He was the best player I'd seen in the Big Ten. Like, he dominated. And but he fell into the top of the second round, which to me, I thought as a kid, I was like, this is the craziest thing ever.
Isn't it wild how that happens? Isn't it like certain quarterbacks, mostly are the ones that are talked about, but like certain players end up just having these Hall of Fame careers just get overlooked, and then there's one team in the 3rd or 4th round that sees something and
dude, like Tom Brady was like, I grew up watching Tom Brady. I saw Tom Brady play live as a kid. Tom Brady was great, man. People forget like his last college game, he beat Alabama in overtime in the Orange Bowl, and he threw for 400 yards. Like he was.
I didn't know all this stuff. You're bringing me knowledge because I didn't go to college, so I don't really have like a college team or anything like that. So I catch some of the bigger college games that are televised on a Saturday, but I'm not really into it.
I grew up in a college town, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like in Champaign, it's like the Illinois sports, the football and basketball. You're like right there. Right? You grow up right off campus. That's like that's like your pro team is your college team. Like I think here in Jacksonville, there's so many people. Down by like Gainesville's close by, they're big like Gators fans, and there's like lots of Seminoles fans in Tallahassee that love Florida State. So like I feel like if you grow up in a college town, like that's almost like your team. like college football and basketball is kind of like your number one.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, just me. I already had the Raiders by the time I was like 5 years old. And then I was like, I don't need to watch anything else.
Yeah, it was like I said, like I was also obsessed with the Pack, like Brett Favre and the Packers, and like when Kevin Hardy and Rice went to the NFL, and like with like then following players, like I always respect the NFL as the best thing and watched every game I could. But
that's
like
so rad. And never knowing that you were going to be doing what you're doing now with the Jaguars.
I had no idea. That's
so
what I'd be doing.
Let's go into a little bit of the success that you've had as this analytics guy. In 2017, you were in the AFC Championship against who we just talked about, the GOAT, and like up to the end, I was like, they're gonna do it. They're about to go to the Super Bowl, and give me what your thoughts were when that game was transpiring and leading up to it.
Leading up to it, I worked like 85 hours in the week. I mean, we did have some successes there in that run, and I was really proud of what we did that year. And I gulped there because, like, I'd like for us to have done better, but like, I don't think, these last couple years, frankly, like, I would have been, let's just say I would have been happier if we'd done better the last couple of years. But like, there are things we could have done that would have set us up better. But I've just tried to do my best as far as like providing the analytics and the information, so that we can make the most informed decisions. And I think like now, we're in a position to make like really informed decisions. But like, we had a great year in 2017, no doubt. And like, that was like one of the hardest things I've ever been through for sure. It was
one of the best defenses I've ever seen too. I mean, they
great. Scored points on defense, and that was hard because like we felt like coming out of the game, like when Miles recovered the fumble and then ran it back for the touchdown, and it got blown dead, and then we would have had a 17-point lead for 16 plus an extra point, presumably, and with not a lot of time left in the fourth quarter, and it would have been different, but. At the same time, like I said then, and like I said to Bill after the game, frankly, it was like they scored the points in the second half and we didn't. And like, whether that play got blown dead or not, like they won and God bless them. And
you shake hands and go on. And you guys did go on after that. You guys made some serious changes in the last couple of years. You guys now, I know it's probably taboo for an owner to say, but are you guys kind of in a rebuilding stage now? I mean, I know you're still trying to.
I really don't consider it that. Like, well, we have a really strong core of young players.
Yeah.
When I look at like what people have done that I would like to emulate, that's been sustainable success. Like you look at like the great things Seattle did in the earlier part of this past decade, where like where they acquired great players in like consecutive drafts and then built off that, and they had some young players from like previous drafts, and then really took like a couple crops of talent and really utilized their picks well and like built a team around it. And I think
that's smart.
That.
Yeah, it seems to be the way to go. I mean, not to bring up the Raiders too much, but I feel that confidence too. They've done well in the last couple of drafts, in my opinion, and it seems to be going in the right direction.
I really enjoy what the Raiders do, and I'm good friends with Mike and John, and I really love those guys. And I don't know if you've ever met Mayock. They're great. The guys that run your team are awesome, and Mark Davis is a great guy. I know Mayock and John Gruden really well, and you got great people there. So it's like
awesome.
It's fun, man.
So I'm so glad because I don't know any of this stuff from the behind the scenes shit, but I'm so glad to know that the owners aren't just all like dicks to each other. Like, I mean, I knew you guys had a community of some kind, but I know like everyone's just like ribbing each other, being like, "Oh, how was your season last year?" Ha ha ha, that kind of shit.
I know it's like good talk. I really like it's a good time, and there's a lot of respect and camaraderie among the NFL owners. And yeah, it's definitely like kind of a we all work together. Like we're all trying to promote the game and grow the game together. And the NFL is like the biggest media business in the country.
It's king, man.
Maybe the world.
Yeah.
And
but speaking of the world, though, then you get into, probably the biggest thing, and if you consider it worldwide, is soccer or football across the pond. And so what's the differences for you? I know you're using the same analytics you said, but what's the major approach that may be different from American versus
Well,
other
it's not
football?
necessarily I'm using the same. I mean, I'm not trying to compare the two sports or the
Gotcha.
games, but I'm using the same philosophy of like being informed by data, information, and applying analytics to the decision making.
Do you have any idea when the league is going to be coming back, or is it the same thing? It's the same thing like we already talked about. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Man. That's the same thing in the music world. I mean, to be honest, like you've been writing a record for a long time, and now it's like, do we get in the studio? Do we not? I mean, when is their crowds going to be? Like our breadwinners are going out and playing concerts, so it's like, when is that going to get going again? And there's really no answers.
Yeah, I think I'm also working in the music business. My partner Bernie and I, and he was integral in starting AEW with me. And together, Bernie and I and our partners, Greg and Matt and Liz and all the great people at Activist Artist Management. We have got like a music management and artist management company out of LA. Bernie and they manage the Grateful Dead, the Dead & Co., Dwight Yoakam, the Lumineers, and Oliver Heldens and Claire Bowen, and a lot of great musicians and a lot of great actors with like David Allen Greer and Ken Watanabe. So it's a great company.
That's a great company. Yeah,
so,
sounds like it.
Yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah,
and,
so that's someone that we don't mean to graze over the soccer as much. Like, there's not much going on there right now. You guys is there a draft for that? Forgive my ignorance on soccer.
That's not how it works. No, you sign players at a younger age than the other leagues, and players come through the academies at a very young age, and it's like really a cool process, but it's totally different than what you do in, say, the NFL. It's like almost like having a farm system in your academy, and you bring players out of that, and
kind of like, is it maybe more similar to the minor leagues or something like that?
Kind of having like a minor league team within your own structure, that, but it's more made up of like youth levels, like U21, U19s, things like that nature.
Okay.
So for us, it's for Fulham. It's we've got our our U23s and our, U18s and all these different divisions. And we really have some great players that have come out of our academy at Fulham and great young players. But what you see also a lot in European football is you see like players going abroad from country to country. So, we've gotten great players from all over, from Portugal, Norway, Serbia.
I see a lot of that. I forgive me for forgetting your name, buddy. There's one of the guys, biggest goalie in Spain, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but every time we're in Europe, he comes around and we've taken pictures with him. He's a big fan of Avenged. So I've gotten to see him, and he's like, he's from somewhere else. I don't remember, but like we've ran into a lot of these soccer players when we're out on these festival runs in Europe and stuff, and it's really cool. I mean, they're all just really cool dudes, and as you said, they just keep flopping on like different. They're not flopping. They keep moving to different teams all the time. Like, and it doesn't matter. And they're different countries, and it's always been confusing to me that. And then they go back for the World Cup, and then they're. I don't know.
The World Cup. So the World Cup, you play for your countries. That's like your international play. It's like how here in America we have
and then NBA.
The NBA. Like guys play for their countries. You play the Olympics, but you also play for your NBA club. And I think so for where I live in London, like that's how it is. And
so you got a house in London. You got a house in Jacksonville. You guys still got a house in Illinois. You mentioned LA. Is there any cities I'm missing here yet?
No, that's pretty much it. Chicago.
Okay. You got a good hub.
Florida.
You don't have anything in Vegas just because?
No.
No.
Maybe you never know. I mean, we do a lot of wrestling shows in Vegas. We do Double or Nothing there, and I'd love to go back and spend more time in Vegas.
I can't wait to go to Vegas, to be honest, man, and we got some friends over at the Palms Casino that we love to see, and then I'm just gonna like top it off. I'm gonna go on like a Thursday and not go back till a Tuesday because I'm gonna stay all weekend and watch my Raiders, and then I'm gonna need a day to recover before I go back to my family.
It's great, man. We had to move Double or Nothing this year. We were doing Double or Nothing in Vegas, and we had to move it this year, but. We've already announced next year, Memorial Day weekend, we'll do the Double or Nothing AEW show. And I'm excited about that.
I got it. Yeah. I'll be out there. I'll check that out. I'll be out there.
Hell yeah. Memorial Day.
Oh, I'm totally there. It's gonna be a hell of a weekend. I don't know if I'll remember seeing you, but I'll be there.
Well, I'm sure for the show, you'll remember Double or Nothing. Trust me.
I'll remember that. I'm saying when I'm out there and I run into you, and I'll be like, it was a great weekend.
Yeah. Outside, I'll be completely for the show itself and my post-show media scrum. I'll be completely sober, but then after that,
we'll have some fun, dude. This is already great. I'm gonna keep it moving. Let's get back into some AEW stuff. You just talked about it. What is this Double or Nothing that got moved, but is on May 23rd gonna look like? This will be the first pay-per-view since. The COVID, and I'm really interested to see what your guys' approach is going to be after WrestleMania was just last month.
Well, I think you've seen philosophically some things about our approach that are like a little bit different as far as like our presentation and how we try to present wrestling. And like for me, like I love showing like our fans, like. Our pay-per-views, like on our TV, like there's some similarities across. So I think like because you're a regular viewer of Dynamite, it's going to be like if you're enjoying the TV, know that it's going to be a great show.
Yeah,
if you enjoy Dynamite, you're going to love Double or Nothing. Next week, I'd be able to tell you a lot more about the card because there's some stuff
that's about to happen. Absolutely, yeah.
But so I have to keep some stuff under wraps. But like the big match, like that we have announced now. Is Lance Archer versus Cody for the TNT title. Right. Cody beating Darby, Lance beating Dustin. That was last night, and now we're back to live shows this week, and we'll unveil more of the Double or Nothing card this week. One thing I can tell you for sure is Moxley will be defending world title. John Moxley will have a world title match. Yeah. Chris is going to wrestle. We'll announce lots of big stuff, but it's going to be a dope show. And like I said, like. It'll be in the image of what the TV shows are like, and I've had go back to the drawing board, and we've had to recreate what the presentation's like. But I think the response has been overwhelmingly positive, that people really like the way we're presenting wrestling right now, given the circumstances. I think we're doing
it is right now, and given those circumstances, but also just when you guys launched Dynamite, it just felt like such a throwback with a new twist to me, that it was just like, that's what I've been missing in wrestling. Wrestling got, without any competition, WWE is kind of, I'm not saying that there's a direct competition at this very moment. It's not the Monday Night Raw or the Monday Night Wars all over again or anything like that. But just having something, an alternative to watch, is like, that's readily available. Yes, there's the NWA, and Billy Corgan just bought into that, and there's smaller entities, but having another one that's had an established fan base on YouTube and all the pay-per-views you were doing before, and readily available. It's such a breath of fresh air to have a throwback kind of to the Attitude Era. It gives me the impression you guys kind of like that.
I love that we've made a wrestling show that, like, with Dynamite being available to so many homes on TNT, really there hasn't been another wrestling show with that kind of penetration outside of WWE in the past 20 years or 19 years.
Since the WCW went down.
Which is, over 19 years ago. So, like, it's a crazy time. So, like, that's really what I'm so proud of. And then I'm proud of the quality of the shows, and that we've continuously tried to deliver. And the recent stretch of shows, I think, were tremendous. And, we were dealt a difficult hand, because it was like, okay, with a very small portion of our roster, like, we only had less than a third of our wrestlers available. Like, less than 30% of our wrestlers were available to wrestle on this show. Less than a third of our contract roster was there. So we had to put, with a small group together, shows that were, like, great. And what's awesome is we're coming back live this coming Wednesday with, like, twice as many people available now.
That's rad.
That, are ready to go for, people that have either had their state orders that are going to be up at the end of the month, or people that weren't comfortable coming, that, that might be a little bit ready to come now, or, it's completely voluntary, these shows. I like
that. I talked to Chris about that. He said, dude, it's all voluntary. Everyone understands the risk and are taking really good precautions. I told
everybody that please do not feel any pressure, and I mean that. Like, I don't want anybody to feel like when they come back, they're not going to be an important part of the show, and that's the opposite of how we try to portray it. Now, we've got a lot of people coming back that haven't been on the show in a month that are going to come back, and they're going to be very important. By the same token, I am very grateful to the people that did volunteer and do the shows that kept
I
this
am too. You guys have an incredible roster. I mean, you go through it, I'm like, by the way, I will be hitting you up to get contacts with some more of these roster guys that I want to talk to. But we'll get there later.
Great. But I love it's great, for us and for you. So that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. The way you guys treat the roster, though, is like a breath of fresh air from, I was never a big dirt sheet guy, but I started listening to this show, 83 Weeks, with Eric Bischoff of the podcast. And that I started listening, and I was like, what is a dirt sheet? And I remembered when I was a kid in the grocery store, I'd see these magazines that weren't following the story that I was watching on TV. And I was like, what is this? I never understood it until 30 years later. Now I know what it is. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But
that's not a dirt sheet.
That's not.
That's not what a dirt sheet is. Those magazines you were picking up, those were like those are Apter mags, is what like people would call them. Bill Apter was a guy. His name is kind of stamped on a bunch of these magazines. There were Apter mags. There were Napolitano mags. Bill Apter and George Napolitano ran these magazines that were like, most of what you picked up was either one of like the Weston publications like PWI or The Wrestler or Inside Wrestling. And then there were these other magazines that were a little, I don't want to say seedier, but they were a little seedier, like Wrestling World and things so more grocery stores carried the Apter ones that were The Wrestler, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. They were not really dirt sheets.
It wasn't what's the one that Dave Meltzer had? Was that
The Observer is a dirt sheet. That is what they would call, I've been reading The Observer for like 23 years, and I think the stats and information are very good. And think Dave gets bashed for being like pro AEW, but I wish Dave would be more pro AEW. But I like.
Well, he takes a bashing, I'll tell you, on 83 Weeks from Eric Bischoff, man.
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I took a bashing from Eric on that show for a thing that wasn't true. He just like made it up.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Dave called him out for. Well, Eric said like he wasn't there, so he just said what somebody told him, but it wasn't true. So like he just like he just made up a thing, or the guy told him a thing that wasn't true. But
I don't know if you listen to the show. I listened to the show. What I heard was that
I like Eric too. I've never really met him, but I like really respect his contributions. I did an interview in the Financial Times where like
you said you were going to do something different. You said you weren't going to be doing the same things WCW did.
I just pointed out good things and bad things they did, frankly, and things they did that innovated, and some reasons why that I would not want to copy some of the things they did. And that article, and it was a good article, but they chose to focus on the stuff I listed that I would not be trying to do.
Well, that's how a lot of interviews are. I've been on that side, man. I'm not trying to do that here.
That's how it goes, and I have a lot of good stuff to say about like WCW and Eric, and like that, but like what I would say is like I thought it was like weird because like I went to like Tony Schiavone's birthday party and they did like a roast, and it was like fun, and like Mark Madden like roasted me, and like I wasn't expecting to get roasted with Tony because like I just came to say hi, and like I wasn't like part of the whole thing. I just like kind of ducked in, said hi to Tony, but it was like he was he was pretty harsh, but it was fine. Like I sat with Tony and like MJF, and like it was good, and then I sat through more people and like through several other, like Scott Hudson did a thing. I sat through Scott Hudson's whole thing and a couple of Tony's friends. So I was like there for a long time, and Eric like said that I stormed out of this thing, and that like I like left right there after it was like he was so upset with Mark Madden that he like stormed off in anger, and I was like, no, I like already told Tony like I'm gonna come up like after MJ, because MJF was roasting Tony. Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna come up, sit with Tony. When MJF's finished with Tony, I'm gonna go downstairs with MJF and we're leaving. But like so I did, I stayed through Hudson, a couple other guys, MJF, and I left with MJF. After MJF did his thing, we left together. And
which was always the plan, apparently?
It was always what we were gonna do. And like that was always what we agreed on. And then I heard Eric say I like stormed out in anger, and I was like, that's complete bullshit. Like that never happened. So like, and then Dave. Look, Dave's been doing this a long time, and I'm not saying he's bats 1,000. Like, he hasn't got it right 100% of the time. But, like, I think Dave tries his best to report the facts. And, like, if he's biased against, like, the stuff he doesn't like, and he's pro the stuff he does like. I mean, he's
which is what his readers want, because, I mean, even if I don't know whether it's true or not, the things that I hear from him, I'm like, oh, okay, well, we disagree on what's important in a match. So I don't have it. I'd never met Dave. I don't.
He also does a good job, I think, of distinguishing like his opinions from like facts, and like people might think that like he lets his opinions influence the facts, but I don't think he does. Yeah. And like I think he does a good job. And like for somebody who's written like the millions of words, I'll say this, like I'm a well-read person. I've read a lot, and like I've read more words written by Dave in my lifetime than anyone else. Like he's written a lot of stuff, and like I think he captured a lot of information and done.
Just from what I've heard, and it could be completely wrong, but are you more like Dave seems to be more about the in-ring work or the?
No, and I don't think that's really true of him either. Like I think he's a judge of the in-ring work, but I think like because like he rates stuff and rated stuff super high, and some of that was our stuff and some of that was other people's stuff. People think that like he's only about that, but he's also got some of the most nuanced opinions about what the best interviews or like what the best stories are.
Oh, and so let's make this a really good interview. Give us 5 stars or whatever your system is.
Well, this is not a traditional wrestling interview, although we are talking about very interesting stuff. So I would say that like I think like for him like what I would say is he's not really more about wrestling matches than stories, but he's certainly not more about stories than wrestling matches either, where like a lot of, but that's not to say that that's the right balance. I mean, to me, like, our show puts a huge emphasis on wrestling, but you also have to have like great stories, and you can't just like put guys out there in random matches against each other. Nobody wants.
Yeah, you're right. There has to be a good ratio, for the success of a show.
But I went off on a tangent because I was like, those magazines aren't really. That's not a dirt sheet. So the Observer or like the Torch or the Lariat, those are like the things people were talking about, which are dirt sheets.
Gotcha.
The Lariat is like PW Insider now. And the Torch is still the Torch, and there's like ProWrestling.com, there's the Observer, but there's not like the dirt sheets now. It's like, really, I don't think they're paper anymore for the most part. I think it's like
what is paper? Anytime I get something with paper to my house still, I'm just like, why? Like, why are you even sending me paper anymore? I could sign up for, if you gave me the option, I could sign up for paperless on this.
I know old people who still get paper Observers. And the Observer, if you've ever seen it, is like, it's in tiny font, and it's like a stack of papers folded over and stapled together. So it's like, if I give you a stack of papers, folded them over, stapled them, and then put a stamp on it, and then mailed it to you. That's what it is. So you get the stack of papers with a stamp on it.
That sounds like the fucking, do you remember the Mel Gibson movie, Conspiracy Theory? And he used to send out that sounds like the Conspiracy Theory.
It's like what you get in Conspiracy Theory. And it's all these pages, and it's in like 4 font, or maybe like 3. You know how it's like the even numbers, it's like 2, 4, 6, 8. But you can like put in an odd numbered one if you want, like manually enter it. Like, I feel like it's like one of those situations where it's like it's in a tiny ass font. There's tens of thousands of words in every one of them. And whether you agree with them or not, like, I just don't think you can discount everything that's in there.
That's fair. I wouldn't know. Like, as I said, I never really read them.
Besides, again, it's like a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy theory.
Whether you agree with it or not, man, you can't discount.
Let's get it. So you obviously read these prior to even starting AEW. What were some of your influences? You had to have been a wrestling fan growing up. What were your favorites? Like some of your favorite stars, an era? What got you into wrestling?
I mean, so many things. Like, there's dozens and dozens of wrestlers and companies that influence what I love and like about wrestling, and they're not all like American, the wrestlers or the companies.
Okay.
But and a great example is, like, if you look at Chris Jericho, he worked in so many different places, and now he's AEW, and he was the first AEW champion, and he's such a huge part of our show. But like, I grew up idolizing Chris, and like, Chris wrestled all these places I watched him. Smoky Mountain Wrestling was totally different from the Japan territory we wrestled. Yep. Totally different from ECW. Totally different from WCW. Totally different from the WWF. And that version of the WWF was different from the WWE or, now AEW. And Chris has gone and wrestled again in Japan. So, like, he's, not only reinvented himself, but, like, he's been in a lot of different environments. And, like, I love his career.
Absolutely.
And, like, so he's, like, a great
easily. Like, I mean, no, obviously, Chris is just huge. How huge was it for you to land him in AEW, by the way?
Huge. I mean, he's huge for us.
What was the first meeting you had with him? When you actually, when was the first time you remember meeting Chris subsequently, easy enough for me to say, did you move on to when you guys started a business side of your relationship?
Well, we talked for the first time in like the summer of 2018, so a little under 2 years ago. And, we had great conversations, and then we met up for the first time, I think, in September. But I had already, through our phone conversations and stuff, we'd already, like, built a good enough relationship where he wanted to go do All In, and I wasn't involved with All In. Like, I had nothing, AEW is a totally separate thing from All In, except for the fact that the guys that, Cody and the Bucks worked on All In, Kenny wrestled on All In, and was involved, and those guys came and they were executives with me, and Chris wanted to do their show, and I wanted to help everybody out, and I got Chris a private plane he had Fozzie's show in Kansas City, so I got him a private plane from Chicago to Kansas City so he could do an appearance on All In, dressed as Pentagon of the Lucha Brothers, and run in on Kenny Omega versus Pentagon. He came in, Pentagon went under the ring. Chris came back out, and Pentagon attacked Kenny again, but it was like he had just wrestled a whole match. Kenny was, they had just wrestled this long, epic match, and Pentagon with a lot of energy suddenly came out, and it was Chris in the paint and the mask.
Yeah.
And then he got, which is a great story. If Chris has never told you, you got to ask him about the story of Chris dressed as Pentagon and the spray paint. How he got it to match up exactly. Because
I'm gonna text him as soon as I'm done talking with you and ask him about that.
The Pentagon spray paint story. I was up in the. I was not producing that show. That would be the last of the shows I was not producing.
Gotcha.
But it was like I was up, sitting in the stands, and it was a great time. And later I heard about it from Chris. That they had kind of a scary time getting the costume spray painted the right color. He's got to tell you it's a great story. But yeah, we met up in September. We'd talked for a long time on the phone, and then we spent like 5 hours together in Jacksonville, and it just felt like a really good fit.
Yeah. What was your first impressions? I mean, you knew Jericho as a fan, as you stated, but when you first were having interactions with him, what was your initial feeling on Chris?
I felt very good because it was like exactly what you wanted to hear. I always believed Chris was really smart, and there's no way he would have had the staying power and the success in the wrestling business he had if he wasn't really smart. There was no way this is just some guy somebody set up.
And you know what I mean? Lucky that many times.
Yeah. Not this. Yeah. Nobody gets lucky that many times that long over and over again, right? It's like Belichick, another like good friend of mine who I really look up to and respect. Yeah. And like Chris is like just such a dope wrestling mind and like a brilliant person. And like it was everything I wanted it to be because like I said, we talked on the phone a lot, and then we got together and we sat there for like 5 hours, and it's like this, again, he's everything you want to believe he is. Like and this is real. Because sometimes the people you meet in life aren't what you built them up to be, and you got to have instincts. I'm sure you know how that is.
Yeah.
There's people you've looked up to, and you're like, man, this guy's. And usually, like we're saying, if somebody succeeds, there's a reason for it. But every once in a while, you meet somebody whether they rub you the wrong way or you just get a bad feeling sometimes, and you're like, I don't know, like there's maybe this guy. I don't know.
Totally. You run into people that are still very successful, and you're like, they rub you the wrong way, and you're kind of like, well, how did you get that successful? I don't know how nice of a person you were to get to where you were.
I just don't know, but like for me, Chris is great, and also he's a brilliant mind. And we talked about Jive, and I'd already had these great conversations with the Young Bucks and Cody and Kenny Omega, and we all had a great vision for what we wanted to do, and I had been talking to TNT for a long time, again since 2018, about bringing wrestling back to TNT, and that I wanted to launch a company which became AEW.
That's right, and so that goes to the Rhodes family and Cody. Like, what was that? Like, why was it? Who reached out to who? Were you just a fan of what Cody was doing or trying to do, or like what was the?
Well, I reached out to the Bucks initially. I mean, I wanted to start a wrestling company, and the first people I really earmarked were those guys, Cody and Kenny and the Young Bucks specifically, and I had friendships with mutual friends, and we all kind of talked, and I talked to the Bucks and Kenny and Cody, and we all felt like it was going to be a good fit, and Cody and the Bucks, we talked first, and then Kenny came later. But yeah, I wanted to start a wrestling company, and those guys, it was the right time, and I knew that frankly in 2019 there was going to be a lot of great people available, and then when I talked to them, I spent hours talking to the Bucks, and Matt Jackson and I talked for a long time, and I still talk to Matt all the time, and I talk to Nick all the time too, but Nick didn't really believe this was like a real thing that I was doing because they hear stories and stuff, and Matt did, and he put me in contact with, obviously with Nick and also with Cody, and later with Kenny, and we did it, and
that's rad.
Yeah,
that's right, you guys. That's great. I'm learning from doing this show. I'm meeting people of all different walks. One commonality, though, that I see in entrepreneurs succeeding is the fact that once they have the idea, they don't second guess. They go for it. You just go for it. Like I know that's harder.
Your ideas. You have to second guess.
Well, second guessing is one thing, but I'm saying like to just go and do it in a way.
Learn more about what you're doing, right? So you have to make informed decisions. So like you don't want to like second guess like everything you're doing or like tear it apart.
No. We want to make sure it's something you want to do and you have a passion and an idea for. But I'm saying once you have those in place, a lot of people would sit back and go, well, I don't know. I feel like this is right, but now I'm guessing that part. It's like, once you feel it's right, let's just go for it.
Well, it's like the more like I got in the weeds on this, the deeper I got into it, the more I knew I was doing the right thing. So like, and you talked about Cody and the Rhodes family. Like I hadn't talked to Dustin or anybody in the Rhodes family but Cody initially, and then also talked to Brandy about the business side because Brandy's got a great.
Which I gotta talk to Brandy, by the way, because she's got that Shots with Brandy show on your guys' thing. It's a great show. It parallels mine, so we gotta have a conversation with her.
You guys could do a cross promotional thing, and you guys could just get really drunk together on one day. You guys could do two shows in one day.
That's what we do here. That'd be fantastic.
That's great.
What were some standout, like when you're recruiting? What's the recruiting to AEW like? And can you give me like one standout like guy that you had a conversation with, and for whatever reason it stood out? Not a Jericho in the way that like it was, you already knew it was gold, but like one that maybe no one's heard of, and you're just like, this guy is gonna be whatever.
That's a great question, man. There's so many, and like I don't want to like say like one person and leave out others, but I'm gonna not say some people because I don't want to like spoil surprises of people that might take you by surprise.
Just a good story of when you were recruiting, like a fun story.
By saying their name, I might kind of tip the hand of what's to come with them. But one person who's already had like a lot of success that I would say that about is like MJF. When we had early conversations, it was really clear that even though he wasn't in 2018 the most known, recognizable person in the wrestling business a couple of years ago, that he was going to be a very recognizable person in the wrestling business. So he's been with us, he signed with us, he's already signed a second contract with us, and he's staying through 2024.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
Because he made a big impact. He beat Cody. Like it was like we had to at that point. We're really committed to him. We built up to that match for a long time, and the pay-per-view that he beat Cody on is one of the best shows we've ever done. And Cody really had a vision for what he wanted to do with him too. So Cody's got a great mind for the wrestling business, and
he comes from royalty there in the Rhodes family, obviously.
Yeah, but like as I know, but like he's done it himself too, and I think you have to give all the credit in the world to Cody.
Absolutely, I gotta give the credit to you too. I mean, I was gonna ask about this, but this is a perfect segue. When you're coming up and kind of taking the reins, as you said, from these things from your father, I'm sure you had to get some backlash because it was your dad's company that kind of gave the family the money originally, and then it looks like nepotism to an outsider in certain respects.
It's like a lot of companies. Frankly, that's how a lot of companies get built.
Absolutely.
And my dad built from scratch, but that's not how most companies are built. And I can't lament on that or go out and start from scratch. Frankly, I'm glad I didn't.
You got the cards you're dealt with, and you fucking went and grabbed them.
Guess what, man? If we wouldn't have Chris Jericho if we were just trying to like wrestle in the backyard from scratch here. So
that's totally right.
Like it took some money to get all these big ticket guys like Chris Jericho and John Moxley and Cody and Kenny and the Young Bucks and all these big people. So.
And you could also talk about your rival right now in McMahon. It's not like he didn't come from anything from before, really.
Yeah, other wrestling companies have been inherited and built, and I think a lot of wrestling companies have been passed down, and I hope I have great kids, and I hope I can pass AEW down to them.
Yeah, you guys also come from such... It's funny you end up with the Rhodes family and their American dream persona, and you guys actually, your family... I mean, is the American dream. You come over from another country and become very successful from nothing, and that is the American dream, right?
That's not lost on me either. That is the American dream, because my dad is not from America, but I am, and I've never, strayed from that. I am American. I was born here. I've never really lived in. I've lived in London the last couple of years for long stretches of time, but my whole childhood and until I was in my 30s, I'd never spent more than a few weeks at a time outside of America, and that is, I think, the American dream, to start a business here and to really embrace it and start a new American family. And
well, I wanted to ask you about like two more of your businesses. I mean, there's so many, and I know that
Dude,
this is a great thing.
I've finished a couple White Claws here, and do you mind if I use the bathroom again real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I dig that. I broke the seal, so
that's what happens. Go do your thing, man.
That's it. I'll be right back. My bathroom is so far away. It's a hike.
See, that's what when you build your own house. I built my bar and put my toilet right next to it. So
that is one of the nice benefits for sure, man. Yeah. I'm in my office, so I'm like it's a hike.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
From where I'm in the media room. The media room's like really far from my office, so I was like running from the media room to my.
That's totally cool, man. Again, I'm just grateful for the time. I got like a couple more things, and then we can wrap.
Dude, I'm happy to hang out. Like, it's
cool, man. As long as you want to hang out, I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Literally, I can't hang out with anyone else. So like,
isn't that so true? Like, I end up talking with not just guests, but like people when I'm doing a normal FaceTime hang with friends and family. Like, I have deeper, longer conversations with them than I never would in person, because it's just like starved for that connection, right?
Yeah, man.
It's pretty. It's wild. I hope everyone like takes that spin when everything does go back to normal. Like, is more appreciative of all that shit, you know?
Yeah, man. I hope so too. I think they will be.
Yeah. Have you seen? By the way, this doesn't have to be part of the show or what. But have you seen like the ozone layer has gone down? Like the hole in the ozone layer basically has gotten so much smaller and shit, and it's like, do we really need all this shit all the time? Can we just take breaks every once in a while?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's true. I mean, like, it's true. I mean, everybody's gonna, but at the same time, I feel like everybody's gonna pick, as soon as they clear people to pick up, like, people are gonna pick up and move, like, more so than ever. So, but no, it's just a lot of great stuff.
Well, I was just wondering. I doubt this is ever possible. It's a utopic idea, if you will. But I was like, what if around Earth Day every year we just took 1 week off? You know, and like it'd be better than nothing. I don't think it would do that much, but it'd be better than absolutely nothing, right?
Yeah, man.
You would think. I don't know.
Yeah. That's a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, it'll never happen, but you heard it here first on Drinks with Johnny.
That's great.
Dude, so you mentioned the cruise. Let's get back to this a little bit. I don't know what that fucking tangent was, but I thank you for going it on with me. The cruise, though, that must have been the Jericho cruise must have been a great time. I saw you had a picture with one of my all-time favorites in Ric Flair. What's it like hanging with Ric Flair? I ask everybody for a Ric Flair story that I haven't had the pleasure yet. I plan on meeting him soon.
He's one of my really good friends. I don't get to spend as much time with him as I'd like. He works with WWE, so we don't work together at all in any capacity. But he went on Chris's cruise as a favor to Chris, so he wasn't involved with any of the AEW stuff, and he's not ever involved with the AEW stuff. So I don't want to get Rick in trouble. But Rick's one of my really good friends, and from several years ago, he's always been very nice to me. And I'm a huge Rick fan growing up, and then the more time I spent with Rick, like, he loves football, and that's how we got to meet Rick, was around the Jaguars. He would come and had done some stuff with us here. And then, we stayed in touch, and I think Rick appreciates that I was always, like, a student of the wrestling business. So, like, years before, started AEW, like, Rick and I stayed in touch, and then Rick had, a really scary period, like, you probably know.
I heard
about
it,
we almost lost Rick, like, a few years ago, and I think everybody was, like, really worried, and Rick's wife Wendy, like, really stood by his side, and when Rick made it and survived, which they gave Rick a low chance. I don't want to talk out of school, but I've heard it was maybe 10 to 20% chance Rick was going to survive this, and we were all really scared, and he made it. And every day I see Rick, and every time I see Rick, it's really very happy and grateful. And
it seems like since the recovery too, he's taken things with that too. He's definitely he always lived life to the fullest, but there's a different glow about him now. And I don't know the man.
He's a lot healthier. There's a different glow because he's a lot healthier. He had a great line. He had a great line to a bunch of us. I went to the premiere of his 30 for 30, and Rick was just out of the hospital, and the 30 for 30 was released. And Rick said, after they'd removed his blockage, he goes, "You know what? To all of you who told me I was full of shit, you were right."
That is great.
And so they got the block, and Rick made it, and God bless him, had a beautiful wedding. And with The Last Dance being this topic of conversation, I was sitting right behind the Undertaker at the wedding, and then Rodman and the Undertaker, I guess they hadn't met. So I took the photo, and it's
Oh, I seen this photo actually. I didn't know how recent that was. It's the first time
they'd ever met. I sent it to Rick. It was the first time they'd ever met. I wanted to take a photo of it, so I was standing right behind him. So I took that picture. And there's I don't know if it's the one you saw, but there's a photo where it's Rodman and the Undertaker, and Rick and Wendy are right in between them, at the altar. So it's the twin towers of Undertaker or Rodman, and you got Rick and Wendy at the altar at their wedding day, right in between them. It's pretty cool.
Did you get to hang out with Rodman? Did you get to hang out with Rodman a little bit?
Very briefly. Yeah, he came to the reception and stuff. I didn't spend a lot of time with him, but he was very nice in the brief time I spent with him. He was great.
Yeah, but, we have mutual friends with him. I've talked to him. I've hung out with him a bunch.
Too. I have some really good mutual friends with him too, but that was what we talked about, but not for a long time.
We actually met on. Are you familiar with the Gumball Rally? Yeah, that's actually where I first met Rodman. He was on the same Gumball Rally as me back in 2005 or some shit like that. Sick. Have you ever done one of those?
No. I've heard of it, but I've never.
It's just a party, a driving party from one place to another. It's a lot of fun.
How did you guys get set up on that?
I think it was this group of girls that reached out to Zachy and the band, and by some stance he was like, "Hey, I think you should go. I'm not the extrovert you are." And I was like, "All right, I'll fucking go." And I hopped on this car. I didn't drive a single mile because I was drinking the whole time. And I was like, "You don't want me behind the wheel. That's a terrible idea." So I just hopped around in a bunch of cars and partied. It was a blast.
That's all Gumball. I've heard of Gumball. That's all a Gumball Rally is. I've heard of this, but I've never done.
Well, it's a bunch of rare cars, and it's like a rat race kind of thing of who can get to the next place. And there's these awesome cars. There's Bugattis, and there's everything. Just everyone's out they're very wealthy people on this thing, and everyone just gets together in each city and parties once they get there, goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning, and drives to the next place. It's
sounds fun.
It's fun. You should look into it. I think you'd have a blast.
That sounds really good. I would check it out. Yeah. I would try one. But I don't really have a lot of time for those kind of things.
Yeah. I would say you'd have to shut down your entire life for a minute to do that.
This moment, spending this time with you is the most free time I've had because I'm scouting for Fulham constantly. We're always looking at new players. But right now, our season's kind of on pause a little bit, and I'm still looking at players and looking at stuff. But I've got a little bit of time now. The draft is over. That was a big thing on my plate with the Jaguars. At Fulham, it's a uniquely standstill period from anything we've ever had. And obviously with AEW, I am super busy, but it is a Thursday. So Thursdays are always a little bit.
This is a perfect time. That's what we said when we were texting. You're like, Thursday's the beginning of the draft. Can't do it this week, but I'll have time next week. Perfect. What else are you going to do? I appreciate you giving me the time, but I got to ask now, what have you been doing with the other time? And the big topic you just mentioned is The Last Dance. Have you been watching this?
Yeah.
You a big basketball fan too?
Huge basketball fan. I coached basketball for 5 years when I was younger, and I love it. And I love the sport, and I love the X's and O's of it. And I haven't worked in basketball firsthand in a while. True Media, my company that we talked about, does a good amount of work in the basketball space and a lot of college basketball stuff. And I love basketball, but I don't get to spend as much time on it as I used to. But The Last Dance really takes me back. I was
being from Chicago in the '90s, this is your fandom, right?
Yeah, I was not a big Bulls fan, to be honest.
Oh, really? I'm sorry, you weren't in Chicago, you were in Illinois, but
I was in Champaign, and to be honest, Magic Johnson was my favorite pro sports athlete.
Yeah, baby. I knew I liked you. I liked you. Lakers, all the way. Lakers.
Yeah, I'm a big Lakers fan, and Daryl Morey, I really really looked up to, and then became friends with, and he's mentored me and has been a friend to me, and I like what the Rockets do, and I like the Rockets, but I grew up as a huge Lakers fan, and I've always really liked the Lakers, and
it is a great documentary, though. You got to admit, this Last Dance is a fucking.
And I was also actively watching all these games, so it's not like I wasn't watching every Bulls game. Like I grew up.
Everybody was watching every Bulls game.
I watched 90, because I had WGN and Sports Channel Chicago, and other than WCIU, all the games were between those three channels. You had 100% of the games that were not on NBC or TNT. So the only games I would miss in the entire season were the small WCIU package that was not available in Champaign because that's a Chicago channel. Okay. But we got Sports Channel Chicago and WGN. So for all these years, the 6 championships and the 2 years in between, I watched most of the games because I was a basketball junkie. And any basketball or wrestling or football I could get, I was pretty much watching all the NFL, NBA, WWF, WCW.
So pretty much all the stuff you really got into so far that you've mentioned, you've put your hand in becoming an owner or an executive of some kind. And now we're talking about basketball. Do you ever see yourself in the future taking that route too, being such a
there's so many things going on. I think it's one of those things that I might kind of have to wave goodbye to. I haven't talked about it in a long time, really. It was a huge part of my life, and the two things I would do if you gave me a pencil and paper and just put me in a room and I had nothing to do, or I'm killing time waiting for somebody to show up for a meeting or whatever. Used to be, I would draw up a wrestling card, or I would draw up a basketball play. And awesome. And it's always been a big part of my life. But I just haven't as much time for it in recent years, but I do love it and I study it, and I could talk about it all day.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there a team out there that you're gonna buy next? I mean,
I don't. We got our hands pretty full right now. With the Jags and with Fulham, and obviously with AEW too here. So I keep busy, but for me, I love basketball, and obviously if you're a big Lakers fan, it's been a hard year. And if you're a basketball fan, it's been a hard year.
Basketball fan in general. Even when the Lakers, for the last long time, weren't doing well, I watched all the other teams. I'm a huge basketball fan. I'm a big sports fan in general, but I have to say probably basketball has become my first love over time. And then, of course, this year starts out with the passing of one of my all-time heroes of life, not just basketball. I mean, where were you when you got the news that Kobe Bryant had passed?
It was in my room, and I took it hard. And I tweeted. I don't know if you saw what I tweeted, and I don't care. I don't think it matters in the big picture if anybody saw it that much. But I thought it was a nice thing to say, and that's why I said it, which was that I think it would be a good thing for people to do if they wanted to honor the legacy of Kobe and Gigi Bryant, if they were to donate to women's basketball programs, because that was a cause that was very important to them, and they spent a lot of time on that, and clearly that would mean a lot to them. And that's so I've done a little of that, and I've donated, made some donations. That
fund still got to be up? Where exactly did you donate? We could tell people.
No, I looked for stuff, and there's some small things I've done, and
that's great.
Donate to do. I whenever I have a chance, I make like small charitable donations and do it on a regular basis if it's something I think is a good cause and is going to help and it's going to make me feel good too, right? And that was a sad time, and that was the
everybody.
outlet.
I mean, I feel like that was our JFK, you know, in a lot of respects. And it still is.
Not that people have disposable income right now, most people, and anything. But if you are thinking about Kobe and you want to do something nice, I would say giving to women's basketball programs and trying to grow the game of women's basketball is something that was very important to both of them and to her friends and the people that were there.
Everyone that was involved, man. That was, I mean, the way that it happened so suddenly and tragically, I think, is the reason why we'll be years down the line and still get that question asked. Do you remember where you were when you heard the news that Kobe Bryant and his daughter went down? I mean, as a father, I just couldn't even imagine. That was another thing. There was an added level to it of imagining being with one of your children. Like, it's just so brutal.
I can't even imagine how horrible. And it's like one of the most awful things that I think I can remember happening in sports in a lifetime of watching sports. And I've put so much time in watching Laker games, and I watched, hundreds of games that he played. Not just like, not literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Oh yeah,
hundreds.
I'm in the same boat. I was such a big Lakers fan that for a serious stretch before I had a kid, and I was just dating my now wife. I wish she wouldn't let me do it as much now. This is kind of the nature of how that goes. But I literally, with my roommate, we would watch every single Lakers game, every single night. We went several times. I owned tickets with our singer. We went together and got tickets. So, I mean, like, die hard. I saw the night live when he scored 81 points in Toronto. Like, it was
dude, I saw
awesome.
Munich that night in the movie Munich.
Yeah.
And it was like early smartphones. And I checked my phone and saw it, and I couldn't believe it. And I was like in the movie theater, and I went nuts when I saw his box score. I was like in the movie theater, and I was like, but Munich was the movie I saw. I'll never forget when he against the Raptors when he scored the 81 points.
Dude, that was insane because he could have gone even further, and Phil finally took him out of the game. But it was like, and he had done that before. It was leading up to that, man. He was scoring 60-point games every week that season.
Yeah, that stretch of games where he had where he had the 50, 65, 50, 60.
Yeah.
I think it was. And he had the 4 straight 50-point games, and there was like a 60 and a 65 in there, and that was pretty cool. And those weren't the most successful teams, and those weren't the best teams we had at the Lakers. But I was actually at 2 of the last 3 games Shaq and Kobe played together, and I was at the last game they played together because I was at game in Detroit. I went to game 3 and game 5. And that was it, as you know.
Yeah.
So, that was a crazy summer.
I wonder if they're ever going to have a documentary, like they're going to tell us, 20 years down, they're going to be like, here comes the other Last Dance. Like, I want to see what that one is,
It would be different. I'm not trying to compare the two things or say they're the same thing, but it was a great era. And, I went to a lot of those games, too. And,
if it's done as well as this one is, I mean, hats off to everyone that created this documentary. It's no joke, one of the best well-put-together documentaries I've ever seen. And that's not just because I'm a fan of basketball. I'm talking about the cinematic and the way that they got these interviews out of these guys so much later and to get them to recall these things. I mean, it's just...
I love The Last Dance. I love it. For us, if you're a big basketball fan, I think it's amazing. What I've found is from talking to some people is that, if you're not an encyclopedic knowledge or if you weren't there and you weren't watching it, it is a little hard to follow because they jump around so much. From 88 to 98 to 91, 90, 90.
I guess it's just because I'm such a big sports fan because I'm this totally gets it.
It makes perfect sense. I dig the fuck out of it. But to people that are not as much in the know, they aren't really gonna get it. So no, I think it's awesome. But for me, I remember all of it very, very well, and I was watching all these games. So, for me, it's great, but I do think, it's a little hard. The storytelling, I wish they did a little more to, explain what you're watching when they jump from, the Craig Elo to,
I guess
So,
that's a fair criticism. I don't pay attention to that because it is so seamless to me.
Yeah, because I'm with you. Like it's like I know exactly what you're talking about. The context of like the '80s bad boy Pistons, and we're moving back to the Jazz, and we're talking about the Lakers, and like but like it is confusing for people. And Rodman's on the Pistons, but he's on the Bulls. Like.
People probably didn't even know that. They only know him from the Bulls or maybe even the Spurs.
I talked to a bunch of people like in AEW and at Fulham and at the Jags. Like you talk to like young people that were not watching the '90s Bulls, and like we're young people, right? How old are you?
I'm 35. I was just asking the same question. How old are you?
37. So like
relative.
So like we're very similar, so relatively the same thing. And my first real pro basketball memories, like I remember the Illini when I was a kid, went to the Final Four, and it was like the biggest deal ever, but I don't really remember understanding the complexities of basketball. The first time I really remember the game clicking and understanding it as a kid, I was 8 when the Bulls and Lakers played, and it was the biggest deal around Illinois.
Yeah, it was the biggest deal around a lot of places. It was Magic versus Jordan for the first time in a championship.
And it was huge, and it crossed over in a major way, and that was why it was so big. But, like, we, in my family and stuff, I can't really remember the NBA being a lot, like, in my house on TV a lot, right? And, like, with college basketball, like, I feel like we would watch it all the time, and, like, but the first time I really remember being broken into the sport that way was, to your point, like Magic versus Michael. And it was like such a transcendent big deal. And it was really like my first memory of like getting into the NBA finals and it being like a big event for me. And I don't know if it's ever been that way since. Like that was as big as it got to me is Magic versus Michael that one time.
Yeah. And for people older than us, it was Magic versus Bird fucking 17 times or whatever it was.
Which, like, I'm a student of history, right? Whether it's, like, wrestling or football or basketball. Like, I love watching that stuff. And to me, the 80s is as good as it got in any of them. Give me the 80s wrestling, give me the 80s football, and give me the 80s basketball.
Dude, I love it, too.
If I put me on a desert island.
My dad actually took me to, I'm sure you remember, you just said you're into history and wrestling. It was WrestleMania 2. I had an argument with him the other night because he said it was WrestleMania 1. I was like, no, Pops. WrestleMania 2 is the one where they had the Coliseum, Chicago, and Madison Square Garden. He's like, I would have sworn it was 1. I'm like, it's okay. You still took me. And I was about a year old maybe. And, I got to go with I was the only sibling that was able to go because the other two were too older. You'd have to buy tickets for them. For me, I just got carried in, and I was at the second WrestleMania, the first time they ever did it in 3 different locations. So kudos, Dad. Thanks.
That's awesome, man. I have like that for me. My dad, when I was 13, my dad took me to see ECW at the ECW arena. And so many of the guys that were on the show now work at AEW or friends of ours. So it's like kind of cool because, I mean, it was Chris's last night in ECW.
Wow, that's funny. I didn't know that. That comes full circle right there.
Yeah, pretty cool. He was heading to WCW, and I was very upset that they would chant "You sold out" at Jericho because I was like, they're so lucky to even have a guy like this here, and you're going to run off. People aren't going to want to come to work here anymore. And it was like it was the only time I was even there, but I felt like one of the people. So I was 13 years old.
That's a great story. Yeah, I love that. So you said you're a huge Blink-182 fan. What are some other what was like your first concert ever? Like
the first concert I did without like that I went to of my own volition was Bush, Goo Goo Dolls, and No Doubt.
Was that during the 16 Stones? Is that during probably like the 16 Stones when that record come out?
Yeah, 16 Stone, yeah.
And No Doubt at that time, probably, they hadn't released Tragic Kingdom yet, so like they hadn't blown up yet.
Right. It was like the big song was Just a Girl.
So it had probably just come out.
Probably just come out, yeah. Or like the single, I guess, yeah. It was like right around then. And probably Tragic Kingdom had just come out. It was like 96, I think that was it.
That makes sense, yeah.
16 Stone was like the biggest album to me in the world. So like I see Bush was like the biggest thing in the world. Come Down was the biggest song in the world.
Dude, understandably, that record was hit after hit and worldwide hit after hit too. I mean, it was kudos to them. That's a great
Recently, we
record.
had Bush here, maybe 8 months ago, like here at Jacksonville and here at our amphitheater, and they rock. They still rock, dude.
Yeah, dude. I heard they got a new record coming out or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, I got to talk
with
to him.
It's ECW. The show I was at, which was Chris's last show, was Rob Van Dam and Sabu also had a stretcher match on this show. It was called The Doctor Is In because Steve Williams, Dr. Death, made his ECW debut. And like Jericho and Too Cold Scorpio tore the house down. And the final match is Sabu and RVD in a stretcher match. And of course with RVD, like I love your guys, your walk. It's amazing. Like I just love like walk is and you guys play a great version of walk. And I thought
thank you. Yeah, obviously it was hats off to Pantera. I mean that's a fucking phenomenal song.
Oh, Pantera Walk is a great song, but I always love you guys play a great version of Walk, and I think it's dope. Thank you.
Very cool, man. Appreciate it. All right, well, I think I've taken up enough of your time today. I very much appreciate it. Let's do this again in person, with or without the cameras. Let's fucking hang.
Dude, I'd love to. I really enjoyed catching. It's seriously like when you reached out about doing it, like I was like, dude, like I'd love to, like, and that's why I'm so glad you were chill about waiting until after the draft because I was like, dude, like this day works great for me because I'm about to jump back into it now with live wrestling shows and we'll see what happens with like.
It's perfect for me. Anytime is perfect for me, man. I'm just sitting here in quarantine. Anytime works for me. But I think it's rad. I think it's rad that someone of your stature that is competing against the conglomerate in the WWE and shows just such an awesome side of yourself. I'll say it for you. I don't think I'd ever see McMahon have this kind of chat with anybody. So and that's not a knock on him. He does his thing. He has provided me with so much entertainment over my entire life. That is not a knock in any way. I'm just pointing out the differences, and I think that this is an incredible. You just seem like such a down to earth dude, and I really appreciate the time, man.
I really enjoyed it, and we got to get a drink together in person when this is all over, but Absolutely. This was like a super dope way to do something in the interim, and I think it's dope what you're doing, because it's like, A, promoting, like, people are staying in and watching this, but B, like, this is a great way to get together, and, we got to do it more, and you can still stay engaged and have a drink with your buddies, and frankly, we see alcohol consumption is going up, but people are not going out as much, so hopefully people are catching up with each other and having good conversations.
And if you don't drink, you don't have to. As we said before we had this conversation, it's not all about drinking. We're getting to know each other. That's the icebreaker, as they say.
Well, I really appreciate it when you wanted to do it last Thursday. I was like, dude, like that's like the first round of the NFL draft. That's not gonna.
Yeah, I should have realized that when I asked you. I was like, oh yeah, you got nothing going on that day.
This worked out great. You couldn't have timed it better, and I really enjoyed like spending the time with you. This has been fun, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Let's keep in touch and let's keep this going another time later.
Thanks, Johnny. This is a great time. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'll let you go now.
Thanks, man.
All right. Well, that'll just about do it for this episode. Thanks again to Tony Khan for spending time with us today here. Couldn't have had a better time, honestly. Look forward to seeing him again in the near future. We could do another one of these in person. Hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure you follow and subscribe to Drinks with Johnny YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. It's easy to find. Just type in Drinks with Johnny. And thanks again for checking us out. Just hope you guys are all safe and entertained. Till next time, cheers.